So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. On behalf of the Queen's Chamber of Commerce, we're pretty excited to have a conversation with you about the do's and don'ts of starting a business and also the do's and don'ts of growing a business. So if you, like many people, are either an existing business owner, have thought about being your own boss, regardless of the industry or where you sit, but you've always wanted to know, what do people do? How do I get started? What are some of the people who are more successful in business doing? How they get started? Sit back, take out a piece of paper and a pen, and feel free to get some really good information. So my name is Paul Harrison. This is not about me. This is all about everyone who's on the other side of this webinar. And very importantly, the two people who are gracious enough to join us this morning. So we will get right into it. In terms of an overview at the Chamber of Commerce, I happen to co-chair the Banking and Law Committee. Myself and my co-chair, Jackie Harunian, and also the Family-Owned Business Committee at the Chamber. We're thinking about ways that we could push out some really impactful information to people. So I wanted to start, before I introduce our two panelists, with some statistics I thought were pretty crazy. So I was looking this up this weekend. According to the US Census Bureau, the overall number of new business applications increased 20.6% year over year from 2020 to 2021. That is up, that's after from 2019 to 2020, the same number of applications was up 25%. People in June of 2020 alone here in the US started 440,000 businesses. And that's a record high after, since they started keeping this kind of data here in the US. In 2020, the top 5 businesses that were started were retail e-commerce businesses, professional services, so think lawyers, consultants, etc., administrative and support businesses, so think people who have cleaning services, customer service agencies, collection services, construction. And the last business, as top 5, is transportation and warehousing, which, to be honest with you, with all the Amazon packages I know I got, I thought that would be number 1 over the past couple of years. So obviously there's this underswell of people who want to be their own business owner, who want to be able to, maybe they were thinking about going to business and the pandemic accelerated that. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So in terms of housekeeping, we're going to have a conversation with 2 really, really good experts who are business owners. If, as you're sitting back taking copious notes, you have questions, there is a chat box, which you're welcome to put a question in. And at the end, if we have time, we'll definitely fit it in, right? So without further ado, allow me to introduce the 2 people who should be doing most of the talking on this webinar. First, I have the pleasure of introducing Jackie Harunian, who's managing partner of the law firm of Wisselman, Harunian and Associates PC. She's a recognized leader in the field of matrimonial and family law. Among her many exceptional achievements over 20 plus years in practice, she was chosen to the super lawyers list for 7 consecutive years, and also twice selected to its most prestigious list, top 50 women lawyers in New York, and she was the only Long Island matrimonial lawyer on that list. Outside of all of her great achievements, I know that her most amazing professional achievement is she also serves as co-chair with me on the Banking and Law Committee here at the Queen's Chamber. So I'm happy to have you, Jackie. Secondly, joining us is Jonathan White. So White Coffee, if you may not know the name, but you've definitely had their coffee. They are one of New York's largest privately held coffee roasters. Their customer base extends through prominent hotels, restaurants, specialty stores, mass retailers, catalog companies, distributors, supermarkets, and regional coffee chains. They're based here in Queens. They are a 3rd-generation family-owned business celebrating their 83rd anniversary. We have the pleasure of being joined by Jonathan White, who definitely has not been with the company all 83 years, but he has been with the company since 1990. He focuses on sales, financial operations, and commodities. He is the current vice chair of the National Coffee Association, which is the industry's leading trade and advocacy organization. So Jonathan, happy to have you. Actually, Jonathan, before we get started, as I'm reading, sorry about that. As I'm reading your bio, I think I'm going to ask the question that everyone wants to know, which is, how do you define a perfect coffee cup, and how do you take your coffee?
Oh, that's a perfect cup of coffee is the coffee you like. So the perfect cup of coffee, I take it black, quite honestly, just because you can taste the coffee better. But there are people who love light coffee. There are people who like dark roasted coffee. People like coffee from a certain origin. There are people who like flavored coffee. We sell them all. And the whole thing is find what you like and drink a lot of it. So the perfect cup of coffee is the one you love.
I love it. I love it. So let me just move my cup of coffee to this side of the table so we can get started now. All right, so let's get into it. So I want to have a conversation. We're going to first start with Jackie and kind of talk about start a business, right? So Jackie, I want to start with you. I'm sitting on this webinar. I've either recently started a business or I'm really thinking about starting my own company or business. I don't know where to get started. So from your seat, if you could just bring everyone up to speed on, now that you've been an attorney for a long time, but now you actually run your own business, right? What was that process like? If you're talking to someone who's taking notes about how they should also get started, what they should do, what would be step number 1, 2, and 3?
I think, first of all, it's a very long process of self-reflection, really considering whether running a business is something that's right for you. For law firms and other family businesses, there is a succession planning aspect to it. And the general wisdom is it takes probably 3 to 5 years to really pull off the transfer of ownership or acquiring a new business. And I'm talking about, our business is very small. We have about 20 employees. We have 10 attorneys here, and I've worked in this firm since I was a law student. So in a very large sense, my entire career has been working on the inside of a law firm, never being an equity owner until January of this year. And now I'm 100% shareholder. I do own the firm. There was a lot of advice that I needed to seek out, tax advice, accounting advice, legal advice. Because obviously there is a very significant agreement that needs to be negotiated and signed. I had to buy out the founder of the firm, Jerry Wisselman, and we had to reach an agreement on that. And a lot of this happened during the pandemic, a period of extreme uncertainty for everyone, especially for law firms. There was really a question about really what the future of law firms were going to look like, where business was going to come from, technology, the court system. So a lot of, I had to really brace myself. And with each challenge, I really recognized that I was ready to take this on. I am very much an entrepreneurial person. I've always been a risk taker in many ways. And I think that really is something that maybe Jonathan and I both share, this sense of hard work, entrepreneurship, willing to take on tough challenges, and having a plan to get there. So in my case, it was really getting information about how to start the entity, the best way to go forward tax-wise, and then creating a firm culture that I'm really excited about. And an industry I really love and I'm excited about. Divorce attorneys are not as popular as coffee manufacturers. Coffee is definitely more popular. And I just want to add that I have a cup of coffee every morning. I think most lawyers do, and it gets us going. So it's an honor to be on a panel with Jonathan. Thanks, Paul.
And I definitely would like to add that you're having a cup of coffee with someone next week. He probably will be taking his coffee black, and that person is me. So thank you very much.
That's right. And it's great being a co-chair of this committee. The Queen's Chamber has created so many opportunities for myself and so many other people. And it really is great sharing this committee with you, Paul. I appreciate this opportunity too.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited to work with you. So Jackie, so bring us back to, so you took over in January. Take us back to last year, right? So when you first were presented with the opportunity, you were thinking about if this made sense for you to do. Who did you talk to? Did it make sense for you to go to an accountant, to another type of lawyer? I know you're an attorney, but did you speak to a lawyer? Did you speak to friends? Where did that process start for you?
I spoke to many attorneys, many other law firm owners, many other women partners, I had a lot of lunches with people to really see, because I had opportunities to merge with other firms. There have been a lot of law firm mergers, and a lot of attorneys during the pandemic have left their firms and are now working for themselves because now they have the ability to do that. And there has been a lot of movement. Law firms in Manhattan moving out to Long Island. Really, a lot of people have made decisions about their future practice. And so I did get a lot of information from other owners, and it helped solidify my decision that this is something that I really wanted to do. I had to very early on get accounting advice, because when you do a buy-sell agreement for a business or for a startup, there's different ways it can be structured, either as an asset purchase or as a transfer of shares. There are very, very different tax implications for both. There were a lot of logistics regarding opening new bank accounts, filing as a PC, which is the decision that I made, making decisions regarding employees, marketing, taking a look at collections, because law firms do have collections, especially matrimonial, accounts receivable, accounts payable, insurance, lots of conversations regarding insurance, health insurance, malpractice insurance. And I quickly became very knowledgeable about all those things, and escrow accounts and bank accounts, and that's part of the education process and the learning curve. I have the advantage of having been inside the firm and already very familiar with a lot of the operations of the firm and the employees. But again, these are all reasons why I felt very confident in my decision. There are times, especially now that I've been in this role for a few months, that I'm realizing it really comes down to approximately a couple hundred extra emails a day to manage a firm. And it really means dealing with client issues, billing issues, a lot of operational issues. And this is not something I had to do before. And I'm learning to lean on different advisors, my accountant, the firm's accountant. I have my own personal accountant, our firm's administrator, who's excellent and very helpful. And I'm learning how to delegate better, because I actually do love practicing law. I like being in a courtroom. I have a huge caseload. And for me, it's very important that I have very smart people around me to help me run the practice.
So Jackie, so you mentioned a couple of really good things. So I took a couple of notes here. One was that for you, even though you're already an attorney, you had lunches, spoke with other people in the industry to kind of pick their brain, right? That was one big thing I wrote down. So now that you go from, and you also still practice, you're not just the business owner, right? So what does your day look like? How do you manage your time, going from practicing and having clients to also managing employees and taking on those extra emails that you've got to respond to?
I have a high degree of energy and willingness to really respond to problems. It's part of what a family law attorney does. But I'm also someone that is a little bit, I would say, maybe compulsive about making sure I respond to every email. I will stay late. I will forward responsibilities to other people on the team to help me with. But I don't leave things, I don't ignore things. And I'm a highly organized person, so I can organize my time. I'm very all systems firing Monday to Friday. The weekends are really for me to relax, regroup, spend time with my family. And then on Monday, it's go time again. Family law is very intense. It's a very messy, emotional, conflict-driven process. And I do like the practice very much. And it is all about making sure that everyone on my team, we work as a team. And so if one person can't meet their responsibilities, for example, last week I was on trial every day. I had so many other cases and other responsibilities that I couldn't get to. It is because people in the team helped me, responded to things, reorganized things, and then I was able to get back on track. It's definitely something where it's a moving target, and every time I think I have it great, there'll be a good day, and then a bad day, and then an overwhelming day, and then in the end, it all works out.
So I love that. So one of my favorite questions is, if you could go back to Jackie before she was a business owner and give her some advice on, some things she should do as you're going into this process of now owning the business. Maybe things that you've done that have worked out really well that you're happy you did, or things that maybe were a challenge that you now know that you could have done a little bit differently. Is there some advice that you would give that person?
I think especially in law, associates that become rainmakers, that eventually become partners, you do have to have that business ownership mindset even before you own a business. You have to be really willing to do more, to be part of a team, an effective part of a team. And I've always brought that sensibility to work. I'm a conscientious person. I'm always going to want to do my share and even more than my share. I think networking is exceedingly important. I'm an active networker on LinkedIn, in other places. This morning at 8 o'clock, I was at a networking event. Even though I'm quite introverted, you can't tell because I can be very talkative, but I am an introverted person. I've become more adept at in-person networking. I know it drives business in my field. And then also knowing how to wind down and recharge. And like I said, I do that mostly with my family on the weekends, also traveling, finding things that I enjoy. So it very much for me, it's being very full on while I'm at work, but also knowing how to guard my private time and making sure that I don't become overwhelmed. Networking is key in my type of business. And I'm interested to hear what Jonathan has to say for his business. Yeah.
No, I love that. I have one other question before we go to Jonathan and come back to you. So I'm curious, and I can personally attest to the fact that Jackie is very responsive. And I know in my line of work, it's the most successful business owners that I've seen, whether you're in business for 30 years or you're just starting up, are people who are attentive, accessible, know their business cold. And you can kind of tell those people pretty quickly when you meet them. And Jackie, you're absolutely one of them. So I have no doubt that you're going to have a really successful run with the firm. So my last question, Jackie, for you around being a startup is, so from knowing you personally and also just listening to you for the past few minutes, a lot of what I see is there's a lot of drive and passion. You really genuinely come across like you love what you do, and I know you do. What would you say, just thinking about having your hat on as a business owner, what are some of the bigger challenges that you've seen and ways that you've overcome them?
There's a lot of challenges, and there are times when I overthink and I get in my head too much that it can be overwhelming. It's a lot of responsibility. I'm responsible for a team of people that are relying on me. I'm a little bit of the visionary for the firm, and I have to kind of set a direction, and I have to motivate employees. It is challenging. I've realized, especially during the pandemic, not only do my clients need a tremendous amount of compassion for what they're going through, because they're dealing with hard times, but I have to have compassion for my staff. They all have their own personal issues. There's been a lot of illness. There's been, unfortunately, some people that have lost loved ones on my staff. There continue to be issues with COVID. It causes tremendous problems because we all have to pick up the slack for people who are out of the office. And I've just learned that I want to be the kind of employer that really supports my staff, really values them. I want them to know that. They're more important to me than anyone else. And we don't really have a hierarchy here. We really do have a team approach. Whether you're an attorney or a paralegal or you're answering the phones, we are all here to support the client. And I think that really sets us apart because of our practice is so challenging and clients are going through so much, but it is a lot of responsibility. I try not to overthink that part of it, because each day brings challenges, and luckily we resolve them and move on to the next day. And that's the only way to deal with the challenges of running a business, is to really have a true passion for what you do, really get up in the morning and say, I really can't wait to get to work. I love who I work with. These issues I'm dealing with are very, very interesting, and I'm a problem solver, and we're good at what we do. It is very exciting, and I do have a lot of passion for what I do. And I think people know that about me, and family law is not an exact science. Law in and of itself, there's a lot of unfavorable and unfair outcomes. And so we have to be able to set expectations, help people get through the process, hopefully towards a better future. And that is not something I take lightly. It's a very important responsibility.
I love that. I love that. So Jackie, we're going to come back to you, and I appreciate that very much. I want to pull Jonathan into the conversation because I think that one of the things that's extremely critical for business in a lot of ways is not only does everyone want to be successful after you get over that initial phase of startup mode, But you start thinking about things like scaling and increasing employees and making more money, right? And growing the business. And maybe you start here in New York, but you have great opportunities in another state, right? And what does that look like? And how can you do that consciously, thoughtfully, but also picking the brain of someone who's been down that road? So, Jonathan, I wanted to pull you in. You are not only are you local, like Jackie and myself and the Queen's Chamber, but you have the unique position of working with family, right? So you're a third generation business. You've been now with the company for a long time, and you've seen a lot of different aspects of the company, from working with family to employee relations, et cetera. I wanted to start off with, my question for you is probably something that a lot of businesses that have been around for a couple of years have dealt with, and that's COVID, right? So I'm curious from your standpoint, at the bank, we talk a lot about weathering recessions and those kinds of economic storms. How was COVID for you, right, as a company, in terms of from your seat? And you also being around with White Coffee since 1990, you went through 9/11, you went through the economic crisis in 2008, and then obviously COVID. I'm curious, you guys have obviously been successful. How do you weather those? For someone who's been around and is looking to grow, do you plan for that kind of thing? Is there something you do differently to prep to make sure you stay in business? And just wanted to start out there.
Okay. Good morning. Thanks again for the opportunity. A good cup of coffee is very important day to day, but a good family practice lawyer can make the difference in your life. So it's important to pick a good one. I'm glad to be here with Jackie. COVID turned our world upside down to some degree, because a good chunk of our business is located in Manhattan. We service a lot of the big hotels, like the Hilton and the Marriott and the Hyatt, places like that. A lot of the down the street places that sell a cup of coffee in the morning. And needless to say, their customers vanished for the beginning of the pandemic. And even today, the back to work return rate is still under 50% in the financial district of Manhattan. And the people are not commuting the same number of times. And so that's the business impact. And then on the operational impact, we are located in Astoria. A good chunk of our workforce comes from Corona, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights. And many of you may remember that at the beginning of the pandemic, that was sort of ground zero for this stuff. And in our manufacturing facility, probably 3/4 of our team got COVID in the first week or two. Everybody was being friendly at a birthday bridal shower, and everybody's hugging each other, and before you know it, you're missing 3/4 of your people. So, and in a manufacturing facility, it's not like an office. You can't make coffee via Zoom. You can talk about it, you can drink it, but you can't produce it. So, we had to figure out how to staff and make sure we had enough cross training, that people could step into different roles, have people come in where we could grab people. From a business diversification point of view, I think Paul, you mentioned about how we do some business in New York, but we also do a lot of business out of town. Fortunately, the bulk of our business was not Manhattan centric, and we do retail all across the country. We do food service business throughout the New York metro area. People describe the New York metro area economy as a donut hole, where everything in Jersey, Westchester, Connecticut, Long Island was okay, the other boroughs, but Manhattan was still really off and is still impacted. And we fortunately had diversified with distributors, direct customers, retailers who were not in that area in Manhattan. So we were able to offset some of the losses in that area, and different business sectors too. People were not drinking coffee out of home, but they were drinking coffee at home. So we sold to retailers where they could buy it, or we did more and more online business, or we had formats which allowed people to drink it more at home, like K-Cups. Our K-Cup business has never been stronger. We can't make them fast enough. We just bought another machine. So I think the way you best prepare for downturns is just think in advance that what if a chunk of your world disappeared, and how would you offset that, and how are you diversified in a way that you could weather any one piece? But diversification really helps.
I love that. Yeah, I made a point of writing that down. That's huge. So I'm a business owner, Jonathan. I've been around for a few years. I've got a lot of passion, like Jackie talked about, and I'm thinking that strategically it could make sense for us to grow. We're interested in scaling. I'm curious from your standpoint, when you think about things like that, right? Scaling different locations, adding to your workforce, et cetera. What are some learnings that you've had over the years? What are some things that are important to you when you make decisions like that?
Well, I guess, first of all, one of the most important things people have great products that they want to sell, be it legal services or coffee, but the biggest thing that you sell are your people. And so you want to make sure that you've got people in place who are customer oriented, both internally and externally, work together, communicate well, not afraid to sort of, how would I put it, tell you what you don't want to hear, because you need to hear that. So I think having those people, developing those people internally, recruiting them from externally is very important. I think, to Jackie's point about networking, it's critical. And it's not only on the business side. I mean, obviously, Jackie does it with attorneys and potential clients and other professionals. The Queen's Chamber does a great job with that too. I mean, one of the other networking things I do, which isn't really necessarily just for business, but I belong to CEO groups and have done that for 20 years. And that's so critical, because you talk to people who have the same issues that you've got. And it's like having an outside board of directors. I'm part of one called Compel, and it just does wonderful things to, people will give you perspective that you might think you know the answer to, but you can't ever learn enough. The devil's in the details with all of this kind of thing, that as you scale, you really have to think about holding those fixed costs down and really focusing on more variable things. And again, as you grow, thinking about what is that unique selling proposition that you have. You've got to have something different, and because if you're just a Me Too product, someone's going to be cheaper than you. So is it a higher level of service? It is, like in our world, is it a certain customization or working with certain brands that people have that they can't get anywhere else because we have an exclusive license to do that? So I think as you scale, you really have to be thinking about those issues. And if you were to scale, you might hold your costs down somewhere else, but do you still have all those competitive advantages?
That makes a ton of sense. And Jonathan, from your vantage point, I'm curious what your thoughts are on things like having defined roles at a company. So one thing that I see pretty often is you'll have an owner who's extremely passionate, knowledgeable, knows their trade well. As they start to grow, one of the challenges that they have that prevents them from scaling is that they like to be everything and everywhere. Delegation is a big conversation that I've seen a lot of business owners have, and they struggle with. Some are better than others, obviously. What are your thoughts from being around for the company, obviously a long time, you since 1990, in terms of having defined roles at a company and how helpful that can be as you look to grow?
Well, let me put it this way. On the one hand, obviously, people need some definition as to what their job responsibilities are and all of that. At the same time, in our world here, people are cross-trained and have multiple roles. And you want people cross-trained because people will invariably be out, or you need a backup or someone leaves or something like that. But you also want different people have different perspectives on things. So I think while you want to have a primary point of accountability, for lack of a better word, because it always has to be clear who's responsible for doing what, when, very defined, having more than one person who can do that really does help. With regard to your point about delegation, one of the great things that my CEO group facilitator did was create a chart which was called Only You. And think about the things, and I think about it all the time, and think about the things that only I can bring to the business. It's not that I do best. I may do a lot of things best just because I've done it a long time and I've learned not to make the same silly mistakes over and over again. But that doesn't mean I'm the only person who can do it. And someone who can do it 80 or 90% of the way may be well worth the delegating to, because then I can concentrate on the stuff that nobody else can do. And that's the stuff that's really critical. It might be working with a key customer, developing a key vendor relationship, whatever it happens to be. So I think from a growth point of view and just an operational point of view, I try to delegate everything I possibly can. There was a time where maybe I learned, I felt bad that, oh, I could bring something unique to it. And as I get more experience with things, I find out that other people can bring even more unique things to things and let me do the things that only I can do.
That makes a ton of sense. And Jonathan, what does time management look like in your world? So, in terms of when you wake up in the morning, or maybe you do this the night before and you're thinking about how you're going to carve up your time in the office, how are you most efficient? What does time management look like for you? How do you kind of work through your day?
Well, like I'm sure many people do, we have all sorts of electronic devices to help us be super productive all the time. And like a lot of people, and I'm not much better at it, there's often not enough time to think, to really stop and not answer the phone and not answer the email. So I think you'll have to think about how you maximize your time. If you can make certain phone calls going or coming, if you can have certain meetings that you can avoid via emails, only have a meeting if you really need to collaborate with people, and make it with an agenda, with a time set, make it as short as possible so it doesn't drag on, and with action points and dates to take away from it. But really have some, build in, you're going to have meetings, you're going to have Zooms, and invariably they'll come on top of each other, and there's always going to be fires. But really try to find time to carve out some time where you can step back and think about, what do you need to do? I mean, I am always trying to plan out my day or my week in advance and think about what that looks like and what I want to accomplish in a given week or month. And mine have quarterly goals or monthly goals as to things I really need to accomplish. And again, my CEO group helps with that process. But I just think it's just being very conscious that the most valuable commodity you have is your time. And you can grow sales unlimitedly, but you can't add hours. And last I checked, you do need to eat and sleep. And if you don't do that, you won't be so productive. And to Jackie's point, you do need family downtime too. So I think, quite honestly, people who don't find that balance are less productive in their work site.
I love that. And so you also have something in common with a lot of chamber members and business owners, in that you are part of a family-owned business, right? And it's a conversation a lot of business owners have. I've seen it for years, where there's that separation between family and then business roles, right? And trying your best to keep those two very separate. I'm just curious, from your perspective, working with family, being part of a family-owned business, what have been some of the challenges? How have you as a family kind of worked together and kind of kept family business with family and business in the office?
So I'm in the business now with my mom and my brother, and we have three people with very differing perspectives. And to some degree, that's good, because you don't need an echo chamber, because the last thing, as you do this for a while, is you learn how little you know and how much you can keep learning. So different perspectives really help. The whole key to thing is being open to communicating respectfully and constantly. You can never communicate enough. You can never, always try to understand another person's perspective on something, because likely, even if you totally disagree with it, and often I totally disagree with somebody else's perspective on something, there's some merit to it. And thinking about that, and you can incorporate that perspective in your thinking going forward and modify it. As I've learned, there are, in the Crayola crayon box, there's black and white and a million shades of gray. And that's really, you have to think about where on the spectrum you can move things and adapt things. So, because I think that's helpful, and family can provide that. And obviously, people who are family have a vested stake in its success. There's more than a financial thing. There's an emotional connection. And there's people who you can have a different level of conversation with. So that's the good part. But you just have to be conscious of all the dynamics.
I love that. I think that's very applicable to a lot of people. So I said two of the questions, Jonathan, for you. So one, I wanted to, again, my favorite question I asked Jackie, I'll ask you as well. If you could go back knowing what you know today and talk to yourself when you first got into the business, especially for those business owners who are maybe at the point where they've been in practice or in business for some time, and they're looking to take the next step, they're looking to grow, maybe they have a family member who's going to join the business or company. What are a couple of things that you would love to impart to yourself, the younger version of yourself?
The three things I would tell you is, number one, to hire people smarter than you, because they will help you grow the business. Number two, you have to be thinking about growing the business all the time, because invariably stuff will happen beyond your control that will shrink the business, like a pandemic. And so you really have to be always thinking about how to keep that sales line going up, because that's where the growth is. And then the third thing, and this comes from my background also as an attorney, a recovering attorney, I guess, is invariably, that background brings you to be conservative and less risk-taking, and sort of telling people what you can't do. And I have found in business, you have to be thinking much more risk openly about what you can do. That's not to say to ignore things, but to be much more creative and thinking outside the box. And there was, I once made a poster for our internal team members about expressions that I never want to hear around here. And one of them is that we've always done it this way, or it can't be done, because, stop and look around today, what's done that would not have been thought of 2 years ago. Anything can be done. It's just a matter of whether you want to or not, whether it makes sense or not. So I just think you have to be very open to thinking in very different ways, because the only constant you're going to have is change, and you have to expect it constantly.
No, I love that. That makes a ton of sense. And so I have one more question. So the only other thing that really comes to brain when I have conversations with business owners, I think everyone, both you and Jackie touched on this, how important good people are, and how much you focus on having a great culture at your respective companies and firms. What are some of the things that you've seen or learnings you've had about, for the person who maybe is out there saying, I'm having trouble finding people. I don't know if I should be using a broker or an agency, or if I should be on it online, or what's the best way for me to cast the net to get some really, really great, talented individuals to join us? What have you found has been successful for you?
Well, now you're asking the really tough question in today's environment. And we have a few more employees than Jack. We have about 110 employees, and we have an awful lot of them have been with us 20, 30 years. But it is very hard today to find talented employees, because people are moving around, people have different opportunities, people have different needs. So, and we've done all the things, Paul, that you suggested, from using headhunters where appropriate to using Indeed and LinkedIn. I mean, obviously, if you can do a referral, word of mouth, that is clearly the best way to go. And again, it goes back to Jackie's networking thing. Networking is not just to get clients. Networking is for everything. Networking is for vendors. Networking is for employees. Networking is for everything in business could be about. And the way you keep people is by giving them paths to grow and by caring about them. And, obviously there are, privacy laws, and there are, lines that are appropriate and inappropriate to go. But on the other hand, people are family, and, we've had in the pandemic and independent of COVID, people who passed away. And I can't tell you how many people, myself included, would go to people's wake or go to people's, celebration when something good was going on, and people really view it as a family, and you care about people, and you are attuned to their lives. So I think that gives people a feeling that they belong to something that's valuable and something they want to stay a part of. And then, to Jackie's point about passion, what you really do is you create, and we put this in our mission statement, you create ambassadors. Because for all the great work that you can do, you can't do it yourself. I don't talk to most of my customers on a daily basis. I've got drivers out in the field, I have salespeople, I have service people, I have customer service people. And if they say something wrong or don't project the message I want, they will mess it up and I won't be able to fix it, even if I know them. So it is critical that obviously people who work for you may not be in the same place as you and have the same kind of investment, emotional and otherwise, but I can't tell you how proud I am when I hear, from customers about things that our team members did going above and beyond. And then, to the point we made actually right before the phone call, tell people that. Recognize them, acknowledge it, do it in a public way when they're doing something good. So, people really understand, and everybody understands how important, those efforts are. So I think that really helps to foster a team and attract people, because you get a rep as a place that people want to come to.
I think that's great. No, thanks, Jonathan. That's really impactful. I know how, including the two panelists, so I want to thank, by the way, for you guys taking time. Obviously, you're volunteering time out of your day at 11 a.m. on a weekday, so I appreciate that. I know we have a lot of hungry, eager entrepreneurs on the line who want to get back to work, but I think it's good sometimes as business owners to take a step back and pause and have these types of conversations. We're all going 1,000 miles an hour, but I think these are the kinds of conversations, especially picking brains by two individuals like yourselves, can really make a huge impact on how you move forward going into the rest of the year. So with that said, I want to kind of bring us towards the finish line doing two things. One, I just want to encourage anyone, I've seen one or two questions come up. If you have a question, feel free to utilize the chat feature and ask, and I absolutely will ask our two experts here and get their feedback. The other thing is I've been taking a ton of notes, and I just wanted to highlight, while people may be typing, a couple of things that I heard the two of you say that I thought really, really stood out to me. You both spoke about not trying to do this on your own, but speaking to people in your industry and picking their brains. Jackie talked about going out to lunch. Jonathan, you talked about the CEO group that you're a part of, where you go and kind of pick people's brains and get information. So I think don't reinvent the wheel, right? People have been there, and you can absolutely benefit by listening and talking with them. The other thing that you both talked about was how important networking is. So I wanted to impart that on everyone who's watching. Networking, like Jonathan said, not just to grow your sales top line revenue, but also to go out there and kind of spread your message, maybe have people be ambassadors for your company, recruit and attract people to join your team and your cause. So I thought that was really huge. The other thing I wrote down is diversification. So we started out talking to Jonathan about COVID and other recessions and how critical. I saw his eyes kind of light up when he talked about how impactful it's been that they've got a pretty diverse business, not only amongst customers, but their distributors, right? Locations they're in, the business sectors. I think that's something that's pretty huge, and we've seen come out of COVID. And then time management was the last thing I wrote down. I think you both touched on. Some people better than others. We're all not great at it, but just focusing on how you plan out your day, your week, etc. So before I get to the question, I wanted to throw out just a question to both of you, and maybe Jackie, if you want to start. So I'm curious from your standpoint. You touched on this a little bit. So the business owner who's super gung-ho, who works 25 hours a day, if you know what I mean. How do you go about keeping that balance between being a successful business owner and growing your firm, but also taking time for yourself and your family?
So I did tell you that I guard my weekends pretty well. I don't take work home in general. And even during the pandemic, I always come into the office to work. I really do have boundaries around my work life and my home life, and I try to keep those secure. But obviously, there are emergencies that I have to deal with in both directions. I really think I've learned quite well how to build in downtime. I work out every day in the morning. That's a good thing I do for myself. I plan vacations religiously. I do it with my husband, weekends, longer trips. I have already several trips planned for this year. For me, it's a good way to make a commitment to be away from the office, preferably away from my phone, and really something that my husband and my children, we can look forward to as a family. And then after the vacation, and hopefully you've had a great time, you can look back on those great memories. And I think that's really what sustains me. I've come to enjoy networking. I have a lot of social professional friends. And so the business, it is networking, it is business development for sure. Even what we're doing today for me is a form of business development. It puts our name out there. But I also have found I enjoy it. I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy mentoring. I do a lot of work with young people, with law students. I enjoy giving back. And it's a very big part of our firm's culture. We give away a lot of free time. We always have a free consultation. It feels good. It doesn't always feel like work. There's a lot of rewards that come from helping other people. Like right now in my office, we have a young man with autism. He's in his early 20s, and he's part of a work program through his college. It's an educational program, and he comes into our office once a week to learn office skills. It is so thrilling when he's here. It gets us all excited, and virtually every other law firm said no to the work program because of the pandemic. But I said yes, didn't think about it. There is, he has insurance and liability protection, but ultimately it's those feel-good things that we can do as a company that really pay back dividends. And I'm always looking for opportunities to give back. And something we talk about amongst our staff, how can we help other people? So yeah, there's some melding of work and home life. There are some boundaries in place too. And as I said before, I definitely don't have it right. I'm always learning to improve on that if I can.
That's great. I love that. And I look forward to seeing pictures from all the vacations. Very exciting. I'm always looking for places to go. Jonathan, same question to you. How do you kind of balance running a business and also your keeping your personal life personal?
Well, a lot of what Jackie said. I like good vacations and try to, I work out just about every day and watch a lot of ball games when I can. But I'm less, unfortunately, for whatever reason, I end up taking some stuff home. I have a quiet place to do it. I try not to have it interfere every day with stuff, but invariably I'll end up doing something. It'll be light. It won't be the whole evening, but it'll be something. And it may just be some thinking time. The other thing I do is I'll wake up early in the morning and do some work at home before I come in, because first, I just function better that way, but it's a good quiet time where I can go online and do stuff that I need to do, because when I get into the office, people are coming to talk to you and you're having meetings and things like that. And the best use of my time during the day is talking to people, because I can't do that, from 9 outside the main hour. So anything I can clear the deck from, I want to try to do. So.
I love that. So we have a couple of questions as we kind of get towards the end. I wanted to throw out, and you guys can hear me okay, right? Because I'm just kind of scrolling through. So first question that came up was, how do you go about speaking with other business owners? Are they, if maybe so I guess maybe I'll rephrase it. If, maybe Jackie, you have colleagues who maybe who you tap, and Jonathan, you mentioned your CEO group. But if you wanted to, let's say, grab a coffee or meet someone in your industry that maybe you didn't have as much connectivity to, how would you typically approach something like that?
Yeah, I'll go first. Matrimonial litigation is a very, very competitive practice, and that's a fact. There's a lot of people that are doing what we do, and at the same time, I have always made it a practice to reach out to other law firm partners. There aren't that many women partners in law firms, actually, and so we all kind of know each other. And even ones that are not partners but associates or working in firms, I have never had a problem reaching out on LinkedIn or emailing someone and saying, listen, I'd love to talk to you about your practice. Can we have a talk? And people have approached me. people have approached me to say, Jackie, how do you do it? What are you doing? What can I learn from you? And I don't mind at all sharing what I know. I love to uplift other people, especially women that need mentoring or that might be fearful. And I've learned that people are wanting to help. They don't mind sharing information. And I'm actually familiar with Compel CEO. I know one of the principles of it. I know it's great. If I could find time to do a group like that, I might try it. But what I did was a version of that. It's reaching out to even women that are my competitors in matrimonial law firms. And I sat down with them. I got a sense of whether it's a good move for me. And I really got very positive feedback, which gave me confidence last year. I also read a great book, and I wonder if, Jonathan, you've heard of it, or Paul. It's called Traction. The book Traction, the EOS system of business ownership and hiring and firing and firm culture. A lot of people recommended it to me. And you know what? It was a great book. It's at least 10 years old, but it really is a manual of sorts of how to know whether you can do better in running a business and owning a business. And I do recommend it. And there's a lot of word of mouth about this book, Traction. I forgot the name of the author, but you'll find it.
Let's write that down. That's great. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that that topic?
Well, in terms of meeting people, the coffee industry, it's kind of funny. On the one hand, there are some huge people, the brand names that you know in your local supermarket and the like. But ironically, it's a very close industry. There, the big people dominate the market, but in like a trade thing like I do with the National Coffee Association, you get to meet people. And I think industry conferences, back in the day when we had industry conferences in person, but those kind of things really give you an opportunity to meet people and learn things. So if you don't know people, want to get to know people, I think that's a really helpful way to do it, and have somebody introduce you to things. And if I can put a book recommendation in, it would be, it's a long-standing book, and actually this gentleman's written several of them, which would be Jim Collins's books. The seminal one is Good to Great, and really thinking about, people with the right seats on the bus, and thinking about where people, it's not that people can't be great team members, but different team members have different strengths they bring to the table. So I think you want to be very cognizant of that. But in general, I just think there's lots of ways you can network. It's with Compel type groups, it's with Queens Chamber of Commerce, it's with LinkedIn, it's with making a phone call with your neighbor. It's quite honestly, I've gotten tremendous business everywhere from the Little League field to the synagogue to, you just talk to people. And just, I'm like Jackie said, I'm introverted as well, but you just start talking and you'd be shocked what comes up. And you'd be shocked, quite honestly, just from a business point of view, what opportunities you can find in the places you least expected to find them.
That's great. I love that. So someone asked about starting a business later in life, if they're an older person. So I'm curious from your perspective, maybe, I guess what I'd want to know from you guys is, I think maybe this is me kind of leading the witness, Jackie, right? In a way, I don't think there's really any age, right? I think there's tons of examples of people who started business, who went into business later in life and have been incredibly successful in their own right, right? So I don't think you can put a number to when you should necessarily get involved in a business. But I guess this maybe leads to asking you both about just the confidence behind it, right? So I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you both decided to take on this entrepreneurial hat, was there a lot of anxiety around that for you personally, or did you go into it saying, hey, this is my path, this is my mission, everyone jump on my shoulders and let's go?
I think for me, there was a certain inevitability about it, because my parents were immigrants to this country from the Middle East. They were both business owners. They didn't have language ability, but they were ferociously hard workers. My father worked 7 days a week in a furniture business. And in a sense, it was the way I grew up, watching my parents, who became incredibly successful and who still work way past retirement age. I always knew in myself that I would one day own a business. And as I mentioned before, I always acted as an owner. I really always went the extra mile. It's sort of who I am, I guess. Always been a little bit of an overachiever. I don't think there's a great age. I actually could make a case that being a little bit older probably is a huge advantage, because maybe you're going to do things with a little bit more foresight and do some research and have the benefit and the wisdom of past failures and other business experiences. So I would say anyone who's listening, who's a little bit older, you should go for it. Don't overthink it. And that's always been my forte. I don't overthink things. I usually see the positives and I don't dwell on the negatives. And I'm willing to fall on my face and start again. And I think a lot of successful business owners, you have to have that willingness to try and fail. It really is what eventually leads to success. And the same time for a younger business owner or someone who wants to try something, your 20s, your 30s are a great time to just give it a shot. I think we're surrounded by stories of very young people that find success. And I think there's even a movement towards, you don't necessarily need to go to a 4-year college to get started on a business. As a matter of fact, my son, my youngest of 4, is 17. He's a computer genius type. And I've actually considered that maybe he doesn't need to do, what does he need a 4-year college degree for? He could probably run a successful business right now, because that's how passionate he is about what he does. On balance, with 3 older siblings that went to college, he made the decision to go to an engineering school. And I think it was the right decision. But I think we're at a turning point in our society where I think a lot of people will have opportunities to start businesses in different ways, and they're going to find success. And even if they don't at the beginning, they will inevitably find success. It is more of a mindset than anything else. And certainly in my case, that's what I would say. It's making that decision that you're going to do what it takes.
Yeah, I think I would, everything Jackie says makes sense. I'd go a couple other tangents on it. I think I grew up never having worked in a business, but I liked working with people. I liked talking to people. I liked, in extracurricular activities in schools or other things I had done, I liked running things. And so, and I liked, I did not mind being accountable. I liked seeing results. I liked moving the ball from one place to another. So I think you have to, I think the age really, quite honestly, is completely irrelevant. I think it's more a passion and an orientation and an accountability. And it's also, it's just a commitment at whatever point you are in your life to, you may be able not to take it home in terms of the work, but you're always going to be thinking about it and it never leaves you. And so I think you just have to, sort of have that orientation. It might make sense if you're older to have someone with you to share some of that because of that investment of time and resources. But I think if you love what you do and you have a great idea, you go for it.
I love that. We're up against the top of the hour. So I think what I want to do is just kind of bring this full circle. First off, just acknowledging and thanking the Queen's Chamber of Commerce for the platform to be able to speak to business owners and those interested in this topic. Excuse me. Also to the Banking and Law Committee, to our colleagues there, and also to the Family Owned Business Committee, which Jonathan is a part of. And then I also want to thank, obviously, Jackie and Jonathan from Wisselman, Harunian Associates, and also from White Coffee. Completely volunteered their time in the middle of a workday. I think I took a ton of notes. I'm hope that everyone at home did as well, or at work, or on the road. And then finally, I just want to kind of impart the following. I think my biggest takeaway of all the things that Jackie and Jonathan talked about is just going out, finding resources, don't have anxiety, don't overthink it, go out, speak to the Queen's Chamber of Commerce, talk to someone in your industry. Just like Jackie and Jonathan, I don't think anyone would blatantly say no to you at all. I think people are happy to, just like Jackie and Jonathan, they picked the brains of people who've been successful before them, and look at where they are now. So if you're out there, you have questions, ask, call the chamber, call your local association, visit your business improvement district, talk to friends, family, etc., and just go out there and do it. So be successful, be happy, reach out to us if we can help. And on that note, I want to again thank Jackie and Jonathan for the time.
Thank you so much, Paul. You were an excellent moderator. I really enjoyed the discussion. It really made me think about why I love what I do, and it's an absolute honor to present with Jonathan. And I'm very inspired by his own experience and everything that he's done with his family business. So thanks again to everyone. It's a beautiful day. We should go out and make the most of it.
Same here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Bye.